We keep the 7 high. We keep the 7 high. Allah's my protector and my guide, and my salvation by the day and by the night.
Because it's a self-supported spiritual ministry.
What is?
That's what it stands for, SSM.
Okay.
Self-supported.
I'm asking you. I'm ignorant.
Oh, okay. I thought
So
you were. Okay.
No, I'm asking you to break it down.
IRS code 508. 508.1
And what does that deal
is
with?
a self-supported spiritual ministry, and here are the advantages. You pay no taxes. You don't have to keep any books. Nobody can tell you what to do in your spiritual ministry. And all the congressmen have it. All the people who know
What is the other
you can
name
make
for this
all of the
SSM?
money.
Give us the
but
actual name for this so people will have a
That's what it's called. IRS
No, but it has
508.1.
it has another name.
It has? It's called?
You can call it a common law church, but it has another name. So what?
Corporation Soul?
Yes, that's the other name. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry, I didn't hear what they said.
It's
Corporation
basically
Soul.
centered around what is called
SOLE.
a natural church.
Yes.
But we just read the Constitution that says Congress shall make no laws what?
Respecting and establishment of religion.
So why would you even recognize the Internal Revenue? Why do you need them to verify anything?
Okay, so if you want to set up an SSM, you pay, here's the other thing. It's not tax excluded, it's not tax exempt, it's tax excluded. They have nothing to do with it. And
Okay,
yet you
my
send up red
question-
flags.
My question is,
Yes.
why do you even need to acknowledge? Because seems like you're saying, look, here is your code granting my right. And we just
they
read
don't
the
have-
Constitution.
And that's what triggered the question.
Okay, all right, and your response is what triggered my question.
Okay.
Why do we need to quote the IRS?
So,
Now, let me stop right there. Is the IRS a government entity?
No,
Are they
it's
part
not.
of the national government?
no.
So, why are they being considered?
So, I set up my SSM, meaning I don't answer to anybody. You cannot look at my books. I don't pay taxes. It's none of your business what we believe. It's my spiritual belief. And whoever's in it, that's our business.
So let me ask one question. Is that amendment in your document?
You just read the First Amendment.
I just asked, is it in your document?
But nobody can look at my books.
I'm not talking about your books. You're listen,
paperwork,
hold on,
where I turn the paperwork into?
I need you to listen. You quoted the IRS. You did not quote the Constitution. Question, is that amendment in your paperwork?
What paperwork?
You're an SSM.
Who looks at my paperwork? I'm not trying to be funny.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
not getting it.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you quote the Internal Revenue about the SSM? Answer. That was the question. Answer.
Why did I quote the Internal
Why did
Revenue?
you quote the Internal Revenue codes about your private religious belief?
When they have no
Question. Now I want your answer. You looking for one or what?
You should have never mentioned IRS because
I wouldn't have known about SSM had I not. I learned about it through Internal Revenue Service.
So why would you not learn about it through the Constitution, which is the law of the land?
So in other words, I
Internal
don't
Revenue
have to
Service,
call it anything is what you're saying to me.
you can call it what you want, but
And
you
quote the-
always have to
quote-
give a declaration.
Okay.
Otherwise, I do not know that you exist. Otherwise, you could cause me some type of harm or vice versa, because if I don't know your entity is out there, then I cannot respect your entity.
Well, okay, I'm not trying to be funny, but you write it
You're
up,
being
and who
funny.
do you send it to? I mean, who am I? Who do
Do
I
you,
send my
now you
paperwork
just
to?
said that you had this entity, right?
No, I don't have one. I want one.
Well, you spoke as if you had one. Now you have me really confused. Because you were saying your SSM is allowed under.
And SSM.
Okay, I'm getting dizzy now. Because you spoke in terms of having this entity.
Yes, I want one.
And you
It is
spoke.
my desire to have one.
Okay, then you got every right to have it. But you were speaking in the context of already owning one or being in possession of one.
It's in my head, yes, but I don't
Okay,
have
then
paperwork.
Do me a favor.
I don't have any
We're gonna
paperwork.
cancel the semantics so we can deal with the law, because that's what I'm here to deal with.
I'm just asking, where do you send the paperwork? I have to let somebody know that I exist. Who?
Where does everybody go to get release?
File myself in the county.
Have you never been to the county? Deeds,
Yes.
everything is recorded where? For public notice. You already know that answer. Why are you asking a question that you already know the answer to? You are familiar with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. But you were
No further
speaking
questions, I got it now.
in terms of having this entity. So I wanted to ask, why do you need someone's permission when you
I don't.
just heard the law that says government shall make no laws respecting a man's religion? That simply means there are no laws by which to govern your religious belief, as long as your religious belief does not harm or interfere with anyone else's rights. And going to these organizations and simply asking their permission. You don't need their permission, because one, you're contracting with them when you use their codes. You're contracting. So you just gave them authority and jurisdiction that they did not have.
I get all of that.
You don't need no one's permission, and that's why I was asking the question when you brought that entity up and you quoted the IRS. I'm under the assumption, based on your response, that you had this entity already in possession. So my next question was, since you quoted the Internal Revenue Codes on your right to exist, why would you not go to the law of the land, which is the Constitution? Your rights are not protected with the Internal Revenue.
Protected under the Constitution.
Your rights are contracted away. Government shall make no laws respecting a man's religion. Now, we covered that way back when, but let's just go and validate that, because I was just reading. As a matter of fact, was having a conversation with one of the brothers last week about all the things that are centered around your religious belief. I got 3 phone calls about a month ago from Detroit. I was so happy that the sisters was listening, because they called me up asking for information about their right not to have their children inoculated to enter the schools. And I told them one thing and one thing only: it violates your religious belief. Don't get into no questions about what your religious belief is. That's nobody's business but yours. The bottom line is, inoculating your children violates your religious belief. The minute she said that, they went in the drawer, they pulled out the document waiving the inoculation. But up until that time, they told her it's not possible. Your babies can't go to school. As a matter of fact, whatever assistance you get from the government, they're going to take it away, yada, 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 yada. Because the sister just happens to be, getting that assistance. So they went to running down to her, it's coercion, it's intimidation. Your babies can't go to school, the government ain't gonna give you this, the government ain't gonna give you that. And there's 1,000 cases that says, regardless of what benefit you claim you granting me, I do not have to waive my rights.
You have a copy of those documents, sir?
Your rights cannot be waived based on a contract unless you knowingly and willingly, voluntarily agree to it. But, you know, for the most part, they know that we're ignorant to the facts, so we get taken advantage of. And I had to come to realization, you know, all of this is about consent. I know all of this is about consent.
You want me to read the Illinois Constitution on religious freedom?
Yeah, go ahead. And in the meantime, I'm trying to find the case. I just had it.
Article 1, Section 3,
I guess it's
religious freedom. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination shall forever be granted, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinions, but the liberty of conscience hereby secured shall not be construed to dispense with oath or affirmations, accuse acts of lasciviousness, or justify practice inconsistent with the peace or safety of the state. No person shall be required to attend or support any ministry or place of worship against his consent, nor shall any preference be given by law to any religious denomination or mode of worship.
No preference shall be given. Now, do we understand what that means? What entity, what religious entity operates a slew of corporations all over the world?
Catholic Church. Vatican.
See, they got a whole city. And it's all controlled under their religious doctrine. And I was looking for that case, and I guess because I'm looking for it, I can't find it. But I just read past it. I'm going to leave it alone for a minute and go back. It's Meeks versus, U.S. versus Meeks. One cannot be held for their religious belief. In other words, if I believe that paying taxes is a violation of my religious belief, then I cannot be held liable for paying taxes. If I believe that acquiring a social security number, this 9-digit number, represents the mark of the beast, and my Creator tells me to not take upon me the mark of the beast, you cannot force me and deny me any right or privilege under this belief. And I was having a conversation with the brother, and he was having a conversation with a sister in the bank, and she was dropping it down about how some folks do all their business, all their banking business, and don't have to bother with no social security numbers all day long. But not only is it that venue, not only does it allow you to travel outside of the country without being poisoned and murdered by way of an vaccination, not only does it allow you to let your children be educated without inoculations, it allows you to do whatever you desire to do under your religious belief without anyone imposing their desires upon you. Because according to the Europeans, the Caucasians, the founding fathers' whole premises of leaving Europe and coming to the Americas was based on the fact that they were being, what? Persecuted for their religious belief. That's why it was made the first. The first was your religious right. And that's why they said government shall make no laws respecting a man's religion. No one can force upon you their religious belief. And I actually had a situation like that a few weeks ago. Brother had offered me a favor, and then it came with a religious overtone. I will assist you as long as you honor my religious belief. And I'm like, well, what about mine? I don't have a right to mine? So I said, well, thanks, brother, but no thanks. Because the minute I went for that one, I would open the floodgates. We have a lot of our folks who have religious mentalities that simply want to dominate and control others. Because that's, in this day and age, that's really what it's about. Yes, sir.
How do the courts get away with asking people to swear on a Bible that what they're about to say is the truth, the whole truth?
Because the
nothing but
people
the truth?
allow the courts to. Because the people fail to quote their religious belief and the First Amendment, which guarantees their religious right or protects.
So if they ask you, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? You can say
I
no.
can't swear exactly all day long. And there's nothing the judge can say. Now, I know dozens of folks who've gone into courts. No, sir, I cannot swear violation of my religious belief.
How
Judge
about
said, well, I
promise?
apologize. Huh?
How about promise? I've seen a court where they have the person to promise, because I've seen that before.
And what is a promise?
I don't know.
A contract. You don't know.
Oh, yeah, okay, a contract.
A promissory note is a contract. It's an agreement.
Affirm is too, right?
Huh?
Affirm.
A firm is another form of an oath. No, sir, I can't do that. It violates my religious right.
You say that, I don't know the truth. The truth is only known by the Creator.
There you go.
If I swear to tell the truth or affirm, I would be lying.
Exactly, because which truth are we speaking of? There are all types of truths.
Martha Stewart should have said that.
We assume Stewart, is just as unintelligent as we are. What makes us think she knows or has a clue? Most of us don't.
Lawyers told her what to do.
Exactly. But that in and of itself, I gave you guys that, year before last. And I told you the importance of that U.S. versus Cheeks. You cannot be held liable. Cheeks. Is it Meeks or Cheeks? I think it's U.S. versus Cheeks. I'll find it in a minute. I'm leaving it alone right now because while I was looking for it, I was scrambling. But that particular case, it goes across the board.
Okay, there's one that's I found a document with right of remedy stated in it.
No, look for Myron's default judgment.
Whose?
Myron. As a matter of fact, put that one in. That's the breach of contract piece we found. What?
Myron's default judgment.
Did you get the?
1 second.
No, the other one. This. Did everybody get this court warranto writ? That was the last class.
Said default remedy or judicial notice.
Myron's default. No, it's not in that particular file. Are you in, which one are you in?
Home nail stick.
Let me see. Go to Moores with issues. I think that's where they're. They're looking at for Myron's default. I think that's where. Wait a minute. Any default judgment that comes up should,
This one right here?
yeah, click on that one. Hold
Next
on.
one.
It might not be in that. No, that's notice of motion. No, that's not it. I'm looking for, it should have been on his, but I don't know where he's, that's a fault. I need a default.
What about this one?
There's a slew of them in there. No, that's the actual fault. I need the default because in the default is where all the definitions is, and I need the definition for right of remedy. But getting back to the constitutional amendment, we covered that and went into great detail. And I was looking, hopefully down the line, here someone said that they had went into a situation where they were being imposed upon to pass such and such, and simply file an affidavit quoting that law of your right, your religious right, not to have all of these things imposed upon you. Because there are quite a few groups, organizations, religious organizations, that do not have these things imposed upon them. We've been talking about the Mormons for the longest up in here. The Quakers. What are those other folks? Amish up in Indiana. I gotta take my hat off to the Amish, boy, because
Mennonites.
the Mennonites. The Mennonites cross borders all day long. They back and forth from the U.S. to Belize, all through South America, without a passport. Without a passport. Again, based on religious belief. And we always quoting the fact that we're the ones who run this and know this and yada, yada, yada. But we don't exercise nothing but conversation for the most part. And the truth of the matter is, we're really not that concerned. That's really what it boils down to. We're really not that concerned because we're really not that sure that we really have any rights. Scroll down, let me see if this is one. Oh yeah, this is it. This is the one I'm looking for. Scroll on down.
He's gonna blow it up and so you can see
Okay.
it.
But that U.S. versus Cheeks case is one of the oldest cases. I think it's either 18 or 1900s. And these cases set precedent from day one that no one can force you into any contract when this contract interferes with your religious doctrine.
Oh, here's one.
When me and my partner set up, we set up Moore's Temple in Detroit, we simply quoted the Constitution and several case laws, and we went and filed it in the county. Now, under that religious entity, we pretty much have a right to do whatever it is we desire. As a matter of fact, we have the right to petition the DMV to recognize our religious tags just like the churches. Because the churches have a religious plate on the automobile. That's if we chose to. Because again, your Creator tells you not to do business with who? With the beast. Not to enter any contracts. There's tons and tons of biblical quotes that initiated precedents on case laws. Because that's what they walk up in there with. They walk up in there with the Bible and they quote a verse from the Bible. And that quote initiates a precedent in the judicial system. How do we know that to be a fact?
Part of the 10 maxims, right?
Say it again.
Part of the 10 maxims.
The 10 maxims are nothing but what?
Quote from the Bible.
said that Congress passed a law. What was it that Congress passed a law making the Bible the law of the land?
You tell me.
Congress can't pass no law.
What was that?
Congress can't pass no law under the Constitution. The bridge in the Constitution. They have no authority.
Government law what?
They only have jurisdiction at 10 square miles of Washington, D.C.
Now, I mean, I'm glad you called that, good brother, because that sounds like an oxymoron. We just read the First Amendment.
Yeah.
But Congress did pass a public act stating that the Bible was the law of the land. Well, it depends.
You can't force a Buddhist to accept.
Bingo. But Congress has the right to do what? There's 2 articles that give Congress that authority. But those articles also states where that authority exists.
10 squares.
Okay? Well, you got to pay attention. Because see, we automatically assume that, first of all, that it extends past that 10 square miles. You got to pay attention. You got to pay attention. Because it's easy to get confused. That's what this whole thing. What do you think the purpose of codes are? Codes only have one purpose.
Hopelessly.
Used to hide.
Say it again.
Keep you hopelessly.
Hopelessly confused. Don't they have a song that talks about being hopelessly confused? But that's the purpose of code. And we can point at the Caucasian all day long. He didn't create code. Hell, doesn't Hammurabi have a code? The code was created for a reason. When we created a code, if you look at Law Latin tells you that it is a fictitious form of Latin created for a purpose. Because when we was controlling the law, when we was writing the law, we didn't want others to have the ability to understand it. Because we didn't want to make the playing field equal. We wanted to have the ability to control it ourselves. So we created a code. We put the law in a foreign tongue, where only us who was initiated into a certain house or society had the knowledge. You want to get back to that more science? Go and study all the stuff the Jews study. But then you got to figure out which Jews, because there's different levels of Jews, and they got different levels of information, and some of their shit is created for the same purpose. Because everybody ain't in the same house. But y'all heard me say it over and over and over again. You never see them folks in court. You never see them being litigated against. You never see them being foreclosed on. None of that. And what was one of the first codes that we talked about that they always use in relationship to a debt? Anybody remembers that code? Huh? Nope. Say it again. Conedry. Anybody know what it means?
All your debts are forgiven.
All my debts are forgiven. Could we find that in the scripture? All day long. As a matter of fact, it is the scripture that says after 7 years, every man shall be freed from his bondage.
So sins
That
and
is-
debts would be the same thing?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's in the
So
Bible.
with that.
Oh, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
I can't tell that's people's English.
The book says right off the bat, when you take from a lender, you automatically become a slave. Look up debt. Look up debt, because for the majority, most of the Moors who were slaves, for instance, me and Hep was at Harold Washington School a couple of weeks ago, and they had a mural of what was supposed to be the first African slaves in America. And I was so fascinated the fact that in the mural, it distinguished that they were not bound, but they had a bond. What is another name for a bond? Contract. Most people who read the history books talking about the first slaves in Virginia, the first 20 African slaves in Virginia, it's a little paragraph that says they were bonded but unbound, which means they were not slaves. They had a legally binding contract. And according to the terms of the contract, after the contract, they were free. Bond, but not bound.
Now,
Yes, sir.
you have bonds on prisoners.
Mhm.
So if there was no bond on them, there would be no contract.
Exactly.
I read somewhere where one of the prisoners in some kind of way got his bond number and got out.
Did you get that, did you find that piece? Because I don't know where it is.
Which one is that?
Do y'all remember when I made the comment about the federal judge made the statement that everybody is in,
Yeah.
who's in prison is there by way of consent?
It's up
Yeah,
there.
you mentioned it.
One of
We
them.
actually found the code, the federal code that says you only go by consent.
Can I get a copy of that?
No.
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody gets
Did
a
he
copy.
change his name?
Yeah, that's his name. Can I get a copy?
Can I get a copy?
Yes, he did. He did change
Can I get a
his
copy
name.
of that more?
I mean, it's fascinating what you can find when when you have the desire to find it. We've been doing a lot of research in the Criminal Resource Manual of the U.S. Attorney General. Man, it's off the chain. It's off the chain. This piece on indictment would just really blow your mind. But the only way,
What'd you say the name of that law you were doing the research in?
oh,
Criminal research?
the U.S. Attorney's Criminal Resource. Now, you got a Civil Resource Manual as well as a Criminal Resource Manual. And the fascinating thing about that research venue is these are cases fought by the Attorney General. And you got pretty much cases on repleveling, cases on mandamus, on a lot of these extraordinary writs. And the interesting thing about it is these are the Attorney General's cases that he's taken on as a result of someone suing the United States. And what I was explaining to my partner, my beloved brother in Detroit, is that here's the real kicker to put you up on the next level. When you know how they fight to defend themselves, you now have a format on how to come at it. When you know what it is they're going to use, it's like when you're playing chess. If you already know your opponent's move ahead of time, game is already won. And that's exactly what it is. It's a chess game. It's as they call it, a thinking man's game. When they tell you that the pen is mightier than the sword, that he who leaves the battlefield first loses by default, all of this is law. And it's fact. But we actually found a code. I've been quoting that judge for 5 years and actually come across the doggone code. It says that their misdemeanors are not punishable crimes. Therefore, if one's to go to jail or prison by way of a misdemeanor, it has to be by consent. The other fact is, where do criminal laws exist? From whence do our criminal laws arise?
Out of commerce.
I'm looking for something else. Say it again.
When there's an injured party?
When there's an injured party. Brother hit the nail on the head. Now, where is that at within the Constitution? What do you have a right to deal with when you have been accused or indicted of a criminal crime? What is the first thing you have a right to face? Your accuser. What else do you have a right to?
Cross-examine.
Cross-examine. What else do you have a right to?
Jury your own peers,
What else do you have a right to?
represented by common counsel.
What else? I'm looking for the main
Due
thing.
process,
This due process, all this is part of due process. But you have a right to face your accuser, and you have what? What else do you have a right to?
Come on, man.
What about to see the damn indictment? The claim,
See that?
Oh, I guess that's,
the complaint. Ain't nobody mentioned none of that.
okay.
First, I need to see who the hell my accuser is. Then I need to see what the injury is. Otherwise, how can I defend myself?
Right.
How do I know he even have a right to a remedy? That's the beginning of it. The accuser and the accusation. Now, how must the accusation be presented?
Sworn out.
Oh, y'all, we covered this so long ago that the only way a court has any ability to act is based off of the first two things: the complainant and his complaint is the initiating process. Now, if you deny me my right to face my accuser and you do not present a sworn complaint, how can I be charged? How is it possible that I can be charged without the elements, the charging instruments? Those are the main two factors to give a court its authority to act on my behalf. Those are the most important elements. And all of this I'm talking about is found in a couple of manuals that has the very name I just mentioned. And I have yet to find anybody who's going to look in the elements of civil or criminal books. Because they give you a breakdown on what you're supposed to be accused of. They give you a breakdown, the elements. These elements must exist. Remember we talked about fraud, that there are 6 elements to fraud to prove fraud. And you have to show at least 3 to 4 of them.
This is a jury manual. Jury manual?
No, the instructions for the jury is in the jury manual. The elements of a crime are in a manual in the law libraries. It's a book dealing with elements of a crime, elements of a criminal crime, of a crime or criminal elements and civil elements. Whatever the accusations you have made, whatever you're charging me with, it's in the elements book. And it gives you the points. Now, if my indictment or my charge has been brought by way of a grand jury, does that by any way suspend my right to face the grand jury? Does that suspend my right to see the charging document of the grand jury? And this is part of the research that we did on the U.S. Attorney's Manual. The indictment. It says that if there's no indictment, there's no crime. It states that, all praises be. I figured you'd show up sooner or later. You've been on my mind. And I'll put it out. Excellent. If there's no charging instrument from the grand jury, the law says that there's no indictment. It ain't my law, it's theirs. It is plain as day. It says if the grand jury foreman fails to sign the indictment, then he can show up in court and sign it right there on the spot. But if he fails to show up in court and sign the indictment, then simply there is no indictment. There is no indictment. Yes, sir.
Well, now, they give you an indictment without a complaint. How's that? You still, without a valid complaint, they still give you an indictment? They didn't do it all the time.
And you said the magic word, give. Now it's up to you to accept it or reject it. Because it's a contract. Let's go back to what it is. It's a contract. It's an agreement. It's consent. You don't have to accept it. That's on you.
So it's an offer.
Does that plaintiff have to be able to swear on the oath? Does he have to, if somebody is a plaintiff against you, they file a claim against you, don't they have to be able to swear on the oath?
You are not asking me that question.
Yeah, you gotta have that affidavit. He just trying to clarify.
No, because it's confusing because you.
What's confusing?
You have the right to not swear on the oath according to religion. According to religious belief.
Yes, you have that right, but here's the deal.
Affidavit.
If you're filing a complaint, if you're trying to achieve your remedy, then you're gonna have to follow the script. Because you can enter a document all day, but if you ain't sworn or attested to it, or under whatever religious belief you want to bring it, but you have to affirm it, because now you're bringing the claim. So you have to prove your claim, otherwise it's a fraudulent claim. Anybody know the penalty for a fraudulent claim?
Could be dead.
It's up,
500,000
it's up there.
for 5 years
Or both. I mean, but it could be more than that in certain
absolutely.
situations. Right?
Absolutely.
Mail fraud.
That's another million right there. But you do have to understand that they're operating from a commercial venue. That's why I gave you choice of law. Choice of law gives you the authority to create the venue that you desire. If you don't claim your venue, what do? What do you grant?
Let them people use whatever they want to use.
You grant them the ability to use their venue. Now we finna go to blows, and you gonna ask me, well, dude, first of all, pick your weapon and pick the area you wanna have this fight. Okay. We gonna use clubs, and we gonna meet in my backyard. And I got 6 brothers, but I ain't gotta tell you that. All I'm gonna tell you is, we gonna meet in my backyard, and we gonna use clubs. And remember, I said we. So show up at this time in my backyard. You come through the alley, come in the gate, and I'm gonna meet you in the backyard. And I want you to have your club. And we gonna have ours. And you best believe we gonna club your ass. Because it's an agreement. That's all it ever is. And finally, I went at you earlier for one sole reason. We say we sovereign, and then we turn around and we ask somebody for permission.
Can I ask the question, please?
Nope.
No, you don't have permission. You're sovereign. Just ask.
I did give you the right to say yes or no. I was just really making you aware that I wanted to ask one.
All you have to do is
But
just put
since
your hand
this
up.
is my first time, I was trying to do the right thing. Okay, because normally I don't ask for permission.
I understand. Just raise your hand, and if I see your hand, I'll call on you. That's what.
Okay, just go back just a little bit when you were saying that criminals are in prison because of consent.
Yes.
I'm just a tad bit confused how that's working.
First of all, the people who are bringing these criminal accusations against you, where do they have authority? Yeah, they do. They have authority.
So how did the criminals give it to them? How did they give them this authority then?
Well, first of all, the Constitution gave them authority to operate and do their business as they so please and desire. Somebody give me that article out of the Constitution. Give me both of them. I love this man. He got a ready-made. Flip that shit. You at it. Oh. As a matter of fact, put it on vibrate. Article 1, Section 8, I think it's Clause 17. And the other one is?
Legislation and all.
Little louder.
Council member
Little louder, little louder.
To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 square miles.
To exercise what?
Exclusive legislation.
Exclusive legislation. Their right to make whatever laws they so please. Continue.
Over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, because the seat of the government of the United States become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
Did you understand that?
Not a word. Not a word.
I love your honesty. Just break it down. Government has the authority to create, enact whatever legislative laws they so desire, not exceeding 10 square miles. What that means is, not Delaware, but Virginia and Maryland gave 5 miles each of their states. They ceded it to the District of Columbia so that they could create the so-called capital, which is a corporation. We got several laws stating the District of Columbia is a corporation. The federal government is a permanent corporation. And within that 10 square miles, they have a right to create whatever laws they so desire. And as a corporation, the corporation has the right to run its business as it so please. The only way its business can have any effect with you, the common people, is how? Contract. And what type of contract must it be? No, it must be a valid contract, knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily.
You must volunteer.
But government has created fraudulent contracts. I'm sorry, I said government. Corporation that calls itself the government has created fictitious contracts, adhesion contracts, by offering you granted privileges. Firstly, you got to understand that they changed your identity.
Licenses.
When they created a corporation called the United States, they then had to turn around and create a corporate citizen called the 14th Amendment citizen. So for everyone who calls themselves a U.S. citizen, they are a 14th Amendment citizen, which is the sole property of the corporation. And so that corporation has the right, via its contract, to impose whatever laws. Just like if you entered into a contract with me and you allowed me to dominate the stipulation within the contract, I'm going to always put the contract in my benefit. So because we have this contract, you're subject to my laws, but my laws cannot go outside of my corporation. I cannot go out into the street and say, hey, you know what, I'm putting you into my corporation under this contract, I'm putting you in my corporation. No, that's illegal. That's a crime. That's violating you. But as long as you don't know it, I get away with it. Because we got consent by what? Acquiescence. That means you didn't make your public notice that you do not agree, so your silence is an agreement. If I claim you and you don't refute or denounce my claim, then my claim is valid. I own you.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's a lot better. That's layman terms. Thank you very
I
much.
feel good. I did something today. All right. Did we find, yeah.
Okay, again, what was the, I looked under federal crimes. What,
Federal crimes, big federal crimes.
where did I go?
I don't know.
Why is it showing up there?
You jumped into another file.
Federal crimes.
Drop
Oh,
down,
right there.
right
Okay.
there.
There you go.
Now,
There you go.
right here, this is perfect. Let's look at this. Let me see where we at.
Let's go up.
Building thing, limitation. Hold on, before you move.
Okay.
Oh, you enlarged it. Okay, Title 18. These are the actual codes that deal with the federal government right to imprison. Now, to get started, look at the Criminal Code of the United States Government. Title 18, Part 3, Chapter 301, Section 4001. limitations on detention control of prisons. No citizen shall be imprisoned or otherwise detained by the United States except pursuant to an act of Congress. An act of Congress is the only thing, that's what they're telling you, that could cause a citizen to be imprisoned. Building on this theme, we now add a corroborating citation from the Federal Criminal Procedure Rule 26 Notes of Advisory Committee on Rules. Scroll up.
Stop.
No, don't scroll yet.
No citizen shall be imprisoned unless by an act of Congress.
Otherwise detained.
By an act of Congress.
By an act of
They gotta,
Congress.
the act has to include my name, doesn't it?
Hold on, we're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Jumping the gun.
That's
Now,
implied.
First of all, before we even go there, we have to understand an act of Congress. Then we have to go back and understand the citizens. Now, scroll up a little more here. On the other hand, since all federal crimes are statutory, now what does statutory means?
Not constitutional.
Not constitutional. What else does it mean? There's another term for inferior. Inferior. Statutes are codes. Codes are ordinances, which apply to administrative corporations. Whenever you see these terms, it has to ring corporation, because corporation has bylaws, codes, ordinances, and statutes. The statutory law of the corporation called IBM, Kmart, they all have their codes, and they can only make you liable to their statutes by way of contract. Now, let's read further. On the other hand, since all federal crimes are statutory, see State versus Hudson, and all criminal prosecution in the federal courts are based on acts of Congress. Scroll up a little bit more. Now we get into an act of Congress. You didn't give you the instruction, man?
I got it. Up and down. He said up and down.
Territory jurisdiction. This is the most important part, understanding that Congress shall not exceed 10 square miles. It has sole authority over its territory. That's how they have jurisdiction over their territory. Now, in order to define the jurisdiction of the federal courts to conduct criminal prosecutions, or, back up, criminal prosecutions, one would have to find out the specific definition of an act of Congress. We find such definition in Rule 54C of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure prior to December 2002, wherein is defined Act of Congress. Rule 54C states, an Act of Congress includes any Act of Congress locally applicable to and enforced in the District of what?
Columbia.
Where?
Puerto Rico.
In territory or in insular possessions. That means the places that they have sole authority over, or the places that they own, like the federal buildings.
Yeah. When they bring in that lease.
Any insular possessions, arsenals, any federal buildings that is, or property that is owned by the federal government is the only place where an act of Congress applies. An act of Congress does not apply to the 50 union states, because the Constitution says there shall be what? A what form of government? And what does that mean? By the people, for the people, then every state shall maintain its sovereign status, which means it is a country separate from the U.S. and totally without authority of the U.S. Plain and simple. And some good old boys use Rule 54C to shut down the federal court. And they snatched it out of the criminal code book. It is no longer there. It is no longer there. That's why they told you prior to December 2002, because that's when they brought it into court. Nothing federal has any authority outside of the District of Columbia unless you what? Contract, unless you agree. Now do you understand the concept of consenting to go to jail? You have to consent. You have to agree. You have to accept the contract. And we do it 24/7 out of ignorance. Because no one ever told us. They always tell us the only thing we need is what? What our folks say every Sunday. All I need is, come on, I'm not trying to violate anyone's religious belief.
Hallelujah.
But it seems that everybody know how to use the religious text but us. People can shut down a courtroom or an entire legal process with the religious text. But the only thing we do is put our hand and go to praying and screaming and yelling, and we getting tossed out in the street 24/7. We getting incarcerated, yada, yada, yada. Y'all know the story. But we don't shut nothing down. But ourselves. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I thought you was fixing the camera.
No. Hey, is that where that comes from when they ask you, are you going to cop a plea? That's what they're questioning you to do. Asking you.
It's an agreement. It's an offer of contract. It means that I don't have anything by which I can indict you with or charge you. So if you cop this plea, I can get you to indict yourself.
Yes, right.
It's simply a self-imposed indictment. And y'all remember the young brother we had, I wish he'd have showed up today, but they tried to get the brother to accept the plea for the longest. His mom and dad tried to get him to accept a lawyer. He stood his ground, and I love the young brother because he...
So, Omar, whether you plead innocent or guilty, you still going into, that's still...
It's still an agreement. It's still an agreement. How can you plead innocent or guilty before the court proves what it's supposed to prove? Exactly. There can be no plea until the facts are before the court. There are no facts. There's no facts on the record. Exactly. He asks you to indict yourself. Look, man, write up the indictment and lock your own ass up. I ain't got time.
I can't.
Help me out.
Yeah.
Make it easy for me.
You're saying I don't have the right to do it, but you can do it for yourself.
So what were you saying about the young man?
Oh, the brother would not cop a plea. He would not take a lawyer, and he simply told him. We were talking over the phone. I said, the bottom line is this. They got to prove that you did something. One, you ain't responsible for another man. You have no idea what's in that dude's head that you was with. Because the brother went to pick up some hemp. And the guy that he was with decided he was...
We keep the 7 high. We keep the 7 high. Allah's my protector and my guide, and my salvation by the day and by the night. We keep the 7 high. We keep the 7 high. Allah's my protector and my guide, and my salvation by the day and by the night. Through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Yo, we keep the 7 high. We keep the RC and 9. Spirit man can never die. He get another life. Yo, he go back to the source of life. I prefer Moors, cause they are the light. We live side by side, keep a tight compass, no evil inside. Unbelievers unwanted. I'm on the front.